Hey, happy Easter, feliz Dia de la Resurrección. And I just wanted to remind you that today is a day of resurrection. It's a day that celebrates the coming in of spring, the resurrection of the life in all of us and all that is, in those beautiful cycles. And I also wanted to bring up in that part and parcel with resurrection is death and darkness. Like, you don't get the resurrection without the death and darkness and being shut in the cave for 3 days and, being crucified, dying to your old self, maybe in a kind of extreme, dark way, in some kind of way. And as you can tell right now, for me, I'm totally on resurrection vibes. Like, I had my resurrection last night. And yesterday, I was in total death, darkness, unconscious shadow side vibes. And that was really important and beautiful too. And so I'm going to link down in the about section here to 2 blogs I published yesterday. One is probably the realest, darkest, deathiest kind of thing I've honestly ever shared with the world. And that is called Crossing the boundary into the unconscious, or crossing the boundary into shadow, or something like that. And then the other one is just a blog, kind of a longer story about how I got my van. So I'll link to those down below. What I wanted to say though, and I'm going to speak and write more about this, so yesterday and for the past couple days, death, darkness, struggle, just closed in on, no hope, and this isn't to say my whole day is like this. It's, also, right, that's kind of the whole point, is all of these cycles, we can look at them on the level of a year, and it's resurrection, and it's springtime, and winter is death. And we can also look at it throughout a day. In a day's time, we go through those cycles of death and resurrection. And yesterday I was in this place, and it was huge for me, you guys, because I decided I'm done only sharing from the place of resurrection, because that doesn't help. I honestly have thought that is what I could most do to help myself and help others. This idea of, I want to make sure that I'm only sharing what's strong and happy and good. And then I'm really only loving that. And actually, to discover love in everything is to also love the times where we pass through those cycles that, again, are part and parcel, other side of the coin, other side of the duality, other side of reality. They hold each other together. You don't have in this world the body and the light without it casting the shadow. And so I just want to remind you that maybe today is the day of resurrection. We celebrate, we call it Easter. Maybe today maybe you don't feel super resurrected today. Maybe you're not feeling that Aries energy of that powerful push of life back up into the light from underground in the darkness. Maybe you're still pretty darn down underground, and it's actually more of a deathy kind of feeling for you. And I just want to remind you, that's part of resurrection too. Resurrection doesn't just mean the time where you feel good again and you're in the light again. Part and parcel of resurrection is the crucifixion and the death. And so, last night when I was writing my second blog, or editing it, I've been working on it forever, the blog about how I got my van, literally 3 weeks. And I have another blog coming out soon about that, because last weekend I was talk about death leading to resurrection. Last weekend I was working on the van blog and talk about attachment for 8 hours, and my draft didn't save. So that was an interesting chance to become a conduit for just rage and to observe my own attachment and to go through that death, to have of being so attached, to realize that A, it didn't really matter that much, and B, I wrote a way better blog. Like, I was thankful it got deleted in the end. Last night though, when I was feeling super resurrected, and I wrote something last night, just a little draft called like the guilt around resurrection, because I was feeling super resurrected and I was like, oh my goodness, like, oh my gosh, how did I post that super dark blog earlier? And like, I just couldn't see, and I don't want to be bringing darkness into the world when all we need is more light. And then I realized, I was like, wait a second, like, this resurrection that I'm feeling only happened because I went through that death. And I think for me, an important part of integrating my inner and outer, my private and my public, is also integrating and sharing my dark with my light, because I don't want you to think that, oh, well, it must be easy for her, like her life's so perfect, and she just has everything. Like, no, I go through really dark, depressing times too, you guys. And I am going to share from there more too, because that's the whole, that's the integration. That is shadow integration, is showing. And actually I show people, when I show that those struggling, dark, working through the mud and the muck parts of me are love as well. That's when I really show that every part of you and every part of me is worth loving, and that everything is love. When I only pretend that love and the parts of me that are worth loving are the resurrection parts, which are very real too, then I feel like I can't show the death parts and the shadow parts. And I'm actually giving the subliminal message that no one else can either. Like, a friend said to me recently, my dear friend Jonelle, my best friend Jonelle, she was like, yeah, I mean, there have been times where I feel like I can't tell you when I'm in that super dark, depressed state. Like, I, don't feel like I can call you because I'm like, oh, well, she's just going to like blast me with positivity and like and it will compost into that. Whatever that darkness and death is going to compost into new life. And sometimes we need to just be with the death and the darkness and like fully let it express and flow, because it is the light and the resurrection. Everything has its perfect divine time though. Like, forcing things to be resurrected before that 3 days or whatever the prescribed time is really missing the point, because you're not actually believing that everything is love and resurrection if you're needing to like rush to get out of that dark place, if that makes sense. So yeah, last night I was like, I just really realized that I wouldn't be getting this resurrection without having gone through that death. And so I am resurrected today as a more, like, especially after sharing both those blogs yesterday, and like somewhere in between those, is me. Like, really dark death, going deep into the unconscious and the shadow and the trauma and the wounding, and then like really light, like narrative, documentative storytelling of like, here's the story of how I got my van. And those are both me. Like, I want you and the world, and this is my work, and this is also a big work for Capricorn. I'm reading this phenomenal book right now, called The Inner Sky. That's a really, really good guide to astrology for any of you who, want to get more into it. And I have found some gold in that book, so I'm going to link to it down below. And one of the big things for Capricorn, and that is my sun sign, and it's Capricorn energy is very, very present in my chart. My rising sign is Libra. So there's a lot of that too. And my chart is just like super chock full of Capricorn. So yeah, it just like resonated so much reading this chapter on Capricorn yesterday in this book, because a big part of Capricorn's work is integrating the private and the public selves. And I think of that too, like integrating the shadow and the light, integrating death and resurrection. And so I am resurrected as a more whole and integrated person today. And what are you resurrected as? Or what are you dead as right now? Because again, you guys, it's a circle. Like, no part of a circle is more part of the circle than any other part. They're all necessary to form the whole circle. Does that make sense? So again, even if you're like, if you're in a deathy place right now, like, be there, because as surely as there is death, will there be rebirth? And it reminds me too, I'll link again, I keep talking about it, I can't stop, the book Untamed by Glennon Doyle. She talks about like when we're willing to feel pain, not mask it, not run away from it, not instantly need to transmute it, but like let it flow, let it express as what it is, because all sides are love in the divine. Like, honestly, in the end, they are all part of that one circle. So she talks about how when we let pain, she was an alcoholic for a long time, and eventually she got sober for various reasons. She got pregnant and turned her life around. And as she began to feel these emotions, these painful, deathy, uncomfortable, yucky, unconscious, shadowy emotions that, when they aren't acceptable, we numb them, we lash out at others and project them to get them away from us. We do anything we can not to feel them. Well, she found that when she actually came to welcome pain and death and darkness, because she realized the more she was actually there for it, that it was always and only an indicator of like great joy and growth and transformation to come. And so wherever you are in the cycle of death and resurrection, I'm wishing you a happy day of resurrection and reminding you that, I'm reminding you that those are all one. And I'm not gonna be ashamed or feel like I was wrong or that perspective, needs to go be deleted of the darker blog I wrote yesterday, because that is my unconscious, that shadow, that darkness, that death is just a part of me, is just as much a part of me as my resurrection and my life and my rebirth. So I hope that makes sense. And, maybe you'll look into my blogs. Maybe you'll write something today. Maybe you'll write about death and resurrection, and maybe you'll share here or with someone, what's dying in you and what's being resurrected in you and how they are intrinsic and necessary to each other. So I love you. Feliz Día de la Resurrección. Y adiós. Cuídate. Take care of yourself.